Adam Bandt, welcome to 7:30.
Thanks for having me.
Will you put forward another motion in the Senate calling for the Senate to recognise the State of Palestine this week?
Well, we're having a think about what to do for the remainder of this week and indeed for the rest of this parliamentary term. Our focus is on trying to get the government to act. There's concrete things that Labor could be doing to put pressure on this extremist Netanyahu government to stop the invasion, things like putting on sanctions, things like stopping the two-way military trade. We want to get the government to do that, including recognising Palestine. There are a number of things we can do: questions, motions, legislation.
Sure. So
we'll have a look at what's
where is the party up to in
appropriate.
that discussion? Are you personally in favour of bringing another motion forward?
Well, since since the invasion happened and the Greens were the only party to vote against the invasion, on a number of occasions we've brought motions
We're
to
talking
Parliament.
about this week. We've only got a couple of
Yes.
days left. The window is small. Do you, as the leader of the party, think it's the right thing to do now to bring forward another motion?
Well, look, what we're looking at this through is the lens of what is going to get Labor to shift, right? What is going to get Labor to act?
And do you think that this would be effective?
Well, obviously things are unfolding very quickly, as we're seeing at the moment. We want the government to join those other countries around the world. There are over 140 other countries around the world who have recognised Palestine to do that. I'd like to see the government do that very soon. I'd like to see the government take some practical steps this week. That's what we're trying to get the government to do. Because since the beginning...
So it's still, just to be clear, it's still an open question for the Greens. You may put a motion forward this week.
It is still an open question
now,
for the Greens.
if you do that, won't that put more pressure on Senator Payman?
Look, it's Labor that is putting pressure on Senator Payman. I want Labor to stop.
You accept that?
Well, I want Labor to stop putting pressure.
A further motion would increase the pressure on her right now.
Well, I want Labor to stop putting the pressure on Senator Payman because as things stand at the moment, Labor has put more sanctions on Senator Payman for speaking out about Palestine than they've put on Benjamin Netanyahu for conducting a genocidal invasion of Palestine.
We're in Parliament House. Let's just deal with the politics of what will happen here this week. Do you accept that such a move to put forward another motion would create a crisis around Senator Payman's membership of the Labor Party?
Labor needs to shift. Labor, instead of putting pressure on Senator Payman,
my question is to you about what the Greens decide to do and what the impact of that decision would be. Do you accept that it would put a crisis, bring on a crisis in her?
Part of our role here is to put pressure on the government to act. Now, the government, instead of putting pressure on its own members of Parliament, who are brave enough to do the right thing and say and do the right thing, they should listen to them. Now, there's been multiple opportunities for Labor to put some pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu. It is just wrong that Labor is putting more pressure on Senator Payman than on Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister, their government, is subject to court orders to stop genocide. Now, when other events happen around the world, Australia jumps to put sanctions on those governments. They have done nothing here with respect to this Israeli government, even as the slaughter unfolds. It is time for them to act. That is what people are calling for them to do. It's what people like Senator Payman are calling for them to do. And instead of pointing the finger at everyone else, the government should ask itself, and the Prime Minister should ask himself, given that they've got their hands on the levers of government, what can they do to join the international community to put pressure to bear to stop this invasion?
Just to come back to the discussion that's taking place inside the Greens party right now, well, clearly you're indicating that there are people who think that you shouldn't go ahead with a second motion. Is that correct?
Well, we're having a discussion about what is the best way to get the government to shift. Now, and we always have those discussions. There's always a multiplicity of factors. But here, at the end of the day, for us, this isn't actually about the internal politics of the Labor Party.
Do you accept that it would be seen by some outside of Parliament House as a form of cynical politics to put forward another motion in the Senate, which would naturally exploit and expose differences in the Labor Party?
Well, that's a version of what the Prime Minister said this morning, and I can understand that for Labor, who are used to everything being about numbers games,
I think you just said that there are people within your own party who are not in favour of putting forward a second motion.
You said that with respect.
You said there's a debate, I beg your pardon.
You said that with respect. I understand that Labor...
There must be two sides to it, right?
No, we discussed a variety of ways. What is the best way to get this government to act? Now, I understand Labor looks at everything through the perspective of numbers games and internal politics and pre-selections and so on. For us, since day one, this has been very, very clear. There is no excuse for war crimes being committed. Now, the way that the conventions that we sign up to work is that when one government sees another government committing a war crime, breaching the convention, they have an obligation to act. Labor has, and Australia has acted when other countries have breached international law, but they are giving Israel a free pass. And why this is so important is that the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister issue these hand-wringing pleas and tweets, please don't invade Rafah, please don't do this, please don't do that. Benjamin Netanyahu and that extremist Israeli government, they ignore them. And then every time they cross a so-called red line, they look around the world and see, are there going to be any consequences? And to date, from governments like Australia, there have been none.
Let me just come in. I just want to ask a question about the politics of this again. I mean, the Greens will obviously be fighting Labor seats across the country in the next election. Does this issue, as well as being one of fundamental importance to the Greens, also present you with an opportunity to win over Labor voters?
Well, from the beginning, we've been taking a principled position. And since not that long ago, we saw Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton join together in Parliament and move to condemn those people who were pushing for peace. The feedback from people in the weeks afterwards was, thank goodness that you, the Greens, are there taking a principled position fighting for peace. People want the government to act, and people are seeing Labor not only not acting, but backing the invasion. There will be an opportunity for people at the moment are making their voices heard through peaceful protest, and there is going to be an opportunity for them over coming months to say to their political representatives, well, if people like Senator Payman can cross the floor, why can't you, Peter Khalil? Why can't you, Jed Carney? Why can't you, Justine Elliott?
In the meantime, have you asked Senator Payman to join the Greens?
I haven't, and I'm not going to go into discussions
Has any
that I've had.
representative of your party asked Senator Payman to join the Greens?
That's not what this is about for us.
Well, it's a straight question.
But that's not what this is about for us.
But it's a straight question, nonetheless.
Well, I've given you a very clear answer, and I understand, again, that for others, and I know that Labor Party people are out there backgrounding, they're saying that this is all about those kind of questions.
This has nothing to do with Labor backgrounding. This is a straight question whether or not you have offered a home in the Greens to Senator Payman.
For us, we just want the government to shift. Okay, this is not about who sits in what party room. This is about getting the government to shift its position, and we want the government to shift its position. And if the government shifted its position, it would go a long way to putting some pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to stop this invasion. Because we're at the point now, I mean, what matters for us is that there's almost 40,000 people killed. We're talking about 120,000 people who are killed, missing or injured. Children are now dying because they can't get enough to eat or drink. And Labor is not putting any pressure to bear on the Israeli government. That's what needs to shift.
Let me ask you a different question. Is vandalism of Australian war memorials a legitimate form of protest, do you think?
We've made it very clear that for us, when it comes to respecting our servicemen and women, look, we might have differences of opinion as the Greens about whether or not Australia should be going to war, but we always respect people who are sent to war. And we've also made it clear that when it comes to making people's voices heard, we want to see peaceful protest. We want to see peaceful with respect to not only with respect to people, but we want to see.
Now, one of your Senate colleagues today referred to it as a form of free speech. Do you agree with that? That it's a form of free speech to deface or to write terms or graffiti onto a war memorial?
Well, what I am concerned about is that the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition. That's a question about one of your colleagues. I think that's a fair question. I'm going to answer this directly. The Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition today were more agitated about graffiti than they have been about the slaughter of people in Gaza.
And what's your position about that graffiti? We've already talked about the slaughter.
I've made it really
it's important
clear.
You've made a clear point.
I've made it really clear that we want to see peaceful protest with respect to people and with respect to property.
So you don't agree with your colleague who calls it a form of free speech?
No, I'm making the point that the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition seem far more agitated about some graffiti.
What about you and your colleague talking about it as a form of free speech? I just want to know whether you see it in those terms or not.
Well, I'm making the point. We are dealing here with a genocide that is taking place.
You're not gainsaying it.
A genocide is taking place. We have a government, an extremist government, that is subject to orders to stop genocide. And the thing that the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition seem to get most agitated about is graffiti today.
Well, but here you are. I'm asking you a question. I'm asking you a question about something that one of your colleagues said today, and I think you've accepted already. Let's put it in these terms. You've criticised violent attacks on your colleagues' electorate offices. You've made that clear that you don't support that. Are you concerned that the violence will escalate from attacking buildings or memorials to attacking people?
Well, I can use my position here to say I want to see peaceful protest, I want to see peace here, and I want to see peace in Gaza. And I say, and I am not going to be lectured to by a Prime Minister and a Leader of the Opposition who back the invasion of Gaza and refuse to use the levers at their disposal to put pressure on an extremist government to stop a genocide that is unfolding. I'm not going to be taking lectures about peace and non-violence for them. There are things that Labor could be doing. Like there are people right across this country who want to see peace, and they know they want to see their government take action to put pressure to bring peace about, and they are not doing it. That is what is going to bring about peace, not only here, but is going to contribute, together with the international community, to bringing about peace for the people who are getting slaughtered at the moment.
Adam Bandt, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thanks.
Thank you.